Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. I'm your host, Hannah Zaberi. You can watch us 24/7 on Muslim Network TV, America's only Muslim network. We are also available on Samsung Galaxy 19, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and soon Apple TV. So a lot of those who know me personally know that I used to be an international student. I came here at the age of 17 to go attend Wellesley College. So when the news hit about ICE going after international students, that hit home for me. Many times, when news headlines talk about ICE, we often think of Hispanic immigrants and dreamers facing the risk of deportation at the hands of ICE. But recently, ICE, which is United States government's part of the immigration services, has also threatened to deport or bar international students. Recently, ICE has also threatened to deport or bar international students if schools move classes online due to the pandemic. As President Trump's pressure states to reopen schools in the fall despite an alarming surge in new coronavirus cases, ICE says international students studying in the United States could face deportation if their schools switch to online-only courses. The US issues more than 1 million student visas a year, and international students account for as much as a third of the undergraduate classes. So think about that. If you're sitting in a class, almost every third person in your class is an international student. So I wanted to discuss this with somebody who's actually going through this right now, an international student on an F1 visa who has been affected directly by these headlines. So joining us today is Sharifu Tusubira. Sharifu is a genetics enthusiast with a track record of launching companies and leading organizations in sub-Saharan Africa. As a young man growing in Kampala City in Uganda, Sharifu discovered his passion for science, advocacy, and engaging communities. At the age of 20, he conceived and launched his first company that went on to receive a contract just after the launch for offering vaccination services to the Government Analytical Laboratories, a division of the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Uganda. Sharif is passionate about research, scaling into innovative business ideas. He's also a machine learning lover, interested in the application of quantitative genetics and genomics. Oh my God. So brilliant young man here on an F1 visa. Welcome to Justice for All Now, Sharif.
Alhamdulillah, I'm happy to be on the show. My name is Sharif Tusubira. I am from Uganda, Kampala, and I'm now an F1 student at the University of Kansas in Lawrence.
University of Kansas. So we're so glad to have you with us today. Please share more about, I know I read this very impressive bio, but I really want to know a little bit more about you, your background. What brought you to the United States?
So the first time I came to the US was in 2017. Mm-hmm. I came to the US in 2017 as part of a US Department of State program, which is known as the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program for Young African Leaders. Mm-hmm. So the US Department of State every year selects up to 1,000 young leaders from all over Africa to come and be part of a professional development experience. And as part of that experience, I went to Kansas State University, where I had leadership classes. Then I went and did work with the office So I need to highlight that I'm a person that stutters. Mm-hmm. That means I may repeat a word or two, or I hesitate in a few words, but it's no big deal. Just give me a second. So when I came in 2017 as part of my leadership experience, I worked in the office of Senator Vincent Hughes in Philadelphia. And that was the first time I came to the US. I had an experience of what it is, how US government business is done. And I got interested in the work. I got interested to come back to the US for my graduate studies. So in 2018, I said a few words. In 2019, I did decide to apply for PhD, and the process of application is not really easy. You have to do GREs, you have to do TOEFL, you have to apply to several schools, you have to reach out to several people in the university to see if they can accept to take you on as a student. And I was lucky that one of the professors at the University of Kansas did accept to take me on as a student, because for the US education system for graduate school, if the professor does not want to take you in, you will not be admitted. So those are some of the hurdles international students have to face before we can actually be enrolled into graduate studies in the US. So
exactly. Like I remember we had to take extra tests. You have to take medical tests. It's not an easy process. You have to be very dedicated and want to study in the United States. And and many international students are extremely, they're very passionate about the topics they choose. They're spending a lot more money to come and study over here. So tell us what all visa processes that you had to go through to get here.
So first, I come from Uganda. In Uganda, the dollar is very, very strong. So it means you have to spend so much of your local currency to purchase the dollar. Among the things I had to do was to do a GRE exam. You have to do the GRE exam, which is expensive. I think it's about $165. To do the TOEFL, which is around the same thing. This involves you having, first of all, buy a book, having access to this reading material. If you don't have the reading materials, you may not be able to pass the exam, because yet the university need to see that you have good scores to be able to admit you as a student. So all those are some of the hurdles that you have to face, especially when you come from when you come from places like Uganda, where the shilling is pretty weak to the dollar, so it's expensive for you just to do one test. Another hurdle is most of these universities have application fees. So you have to pay up to $80 and $120 just to apply for one university. And sometimes you have to apply for 1, 2, 3, or 4 universities before you can actually have an admission.
Yes.
Once you have the admission, you have to have, there's a fee we pay called the service fee. It goes, I think, to the US department, something, immigration stuff, to give you a service number. That now helps you be able to go. That's just after the service fee. You also have to pay a visa fee, because you have to pay the visa fee, and you go to the embassy, pay the visa fee. It can take up to 3 months before you can be able to have an interview for the visa. And often at times the visa is never sure. Even when you've gone through all those hassles, the visa is never sure. When you come from places like Uganda, where you're seen as high-risk immigrant, so the visa is never sure. So all that, some of the hurdles we have to go through before we can actually be admitted to school in the US. And in addition to that, schools do not offer air ticket. So you have to have more money to buy an air ticket for you to come to the US to be able to study school. So those are some of the key issues. So it makes it pretty hard for people who come from poor families, people who don't have the money, people who may not have the resources, because the GRE, accessing GRE resources, accessing TOEFL resources, these are all resources that have a fee attached to them. So it puts it puts a big burden for you to decide that I'm going to go to graduate school in the US or anywhere else.
Exactly. And once you're here in the United States, the fee structure is very different for international students as well. Compare residential hall fees, as well as living on, campus fees. Those are some things that I've definitely noticed in my experience. A lot of times the tuition that international students are paying are 4 times as much as what local students would be paying.
Yes, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. We had an issue at our University of Kansas, just this month, when the university had decided to maintain tuition and student fees, but decided to increase those for international students. We had to come out as a team to complain and petition the university. And the good thing, the administration was very lenient. They had our plea and said it's a pandemic, we are all affected. Especially, like I said, when you come from places like Uganda, the economies are pretty weak. So the COVID has affected them much. So most international students are affected in terms of money. So when you take off, the fees are already high. If you make them any higher, it's pretty a big hurdle, but we are lucky that the fee got rescinded. So the University of Kansas did not increase the fee any further, but it's a pretty big issue because our fees are higher than the normal fees. I mean, I don't want to say it, but in sometimes we are looked at as money cows.
Exactly, cash cow.
Yeah, cash cow.
Definitely.
They want to milk you as much as they can, which sometimes it's not the reality. That's not how it is. It's not
And
that
then
everyone comes here has the money.
another aspect of this is once you're an international student here, it's you don't apply or you don't qualify for financial aid in the same way as state students apply and
Yeah,
qualify for financial aid.
that's a big deal.
Scholarships are also limited because as international students, and while you're on campus, you're not allowed to work off campus majority of the time unless you have a special kind of internship or something of that sort where you're allowed to work off campus. And on campus jobs are few and far, they're limited. So all of these, the reason why we want to share all of this with you is that those of us who are watching realize how big a impact all of this policy would have on international students who are stuck here during COVID. But I want to know a little bit more about you, Sharif. So, doing a little bit of research about your background, we found that you've presented about sickle cell anemia awareness and your other advocacy work in our country, United States.
Yeah.
How else has the United States been important to your work, and how do you think citizens of other countries, such as international students, contribute to American society?
I think before I answer the question you raised, I want to go back to one of the things you just talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
The COVID pandemic has been pretty hard on international students, given the fact that universities closed down. Our F1 visas do not let us work off campus. So it means when universities are closed, the jobs are also closed. So many international students were not able to actually work on campus, and neither could they work off campus. So we had several times. I have so many friends of mine who lost their jobs on campus, didn't have enough money, just because of this COVID issue. So, and when you add on, when you add all when you add all that up, it's pretty very stressful for us international students here in the US. So if I go to the issue of how much value do we have as international students in the US, one, first of all, I'd like you to know that we have a lot to offer on the table. You just say that a third of the classes are made of international students. So it means the cultural perspective that we bring. I'll give an example myself. I'm only one of 3 Ugandans at the University of Kansas. Out of the 20,000 or so many students at the University of Kansas, we're only 3 Ugandans. So this means that every class that I sit in, every meeting I go to, every social event I go to, I bring a different perspective to the table. There's something different there's the cultural perspective I have and experience I have is pretty different that none of my colleagues has it. And that's what all international students do when we come from all our places, be it Uganda, be it Kenya, be it Jordan, wherever international students are going to come from. We come with a lot of experience that we do bring. So when we talk to people, when we network with people, they get to learn from Uganda, learn what Uganda is all about, and I also get to learn from what the US is about, what the US is all about. But the big issue is we make a very significant contribution to the culture experience students have on campus, which I think is one of the when people come to universities to learn, they're interested in not only the education but that experience that comes with being on a college campus, the people you meet, the network you make, and that's what international students are for. We bring the global experience to the US campus, which US's campuses will not actually be without international students. So it's a win-win situation. We come here to learn, but we come with a lot that domestic students and professors do benefit from us. Yes, like you said, I have sickle cell disease. So as part of my work, I've been a sickle cell advocate for so many years. And one of the first times I came to the US was because of my sickle cell advocacy I was doing. That's why the US Department of State thought it wise to invest in me and bring me to the US in 2017 as a T1 student. As part of the things we did at that time was through government work with the US communities, let them learn about what we are doing in Africa and how the US can be beneficial to Africa and how Africa can be beneficial to the US because we're in a global world where we as citizens of the world are meant to learn from one another and benefit each other. So that's one of the key issues with international students are doing.
That is it's so powerful. And when you look back at some of the most powerful speakers, and you look at people who have contributed so much to American society. And a lot of times you find out that they themselves came here to study and fell in love with, even like, for example, the gentleman who designed the Sears Towers. This is a iconic American building, but it was designed by someone who came as an international student, and actually a Muslim who designed it. And it's so just the fabric of this country has so much contribution of international students who have gone in to do their PhDs, contribute, and have a lot of times have fallen in love with this country and stayed. So this is something definitely that we want to highlight and let people know. Now, if you have connections to the University of Kansas, yet your work expands out of the boundaries of the United States and actually brings is actually incredibly significant in Uganda, in Africa. So how has expanding your work to different countries benefited your advocacy mission? And we want to talk about, like, what advantages does a country have when it opens up its borders to the rest of the world?
Well, I think one of the things, just to add on that, to be able to emphasize, is that the fact that we're in a global society, the fact that today, when I started my sickle cell advocacy, I was probably doing it in only Uganda. But I then realized that 75% of the world's sickle cell is in sub-Saharan Africa. So it doesn't make a big deal for me to do whatever I do only in Uganda without forgetting that the rest of Africa is also affected by sickle cell. So only the 25% of sickle cell is in places like the US, where it's considered a rare disease. But across the world, sickle cell is pretty few. So the numbers are pretty small. They're not that many. So one of the things why the global network is it's very key and essential, because then we can learn from each other. We can have technology transfer. I'll give an example. So one of the things that I did, part of my Mandela, the fellowship I was doing, we got funding from the U.S. Department of State to have one of the healthcare workers from the U.S. come to Uganda and train people in sickle cell. The nurse practitioner called Donna Makari is a very good lady. She came to Uganda and had a good experience just sharing the network, sharing with the sickle cell care in Uganda. But one of the things that happened was not actually what happened when she came to Uganda. The biggest story is when she came back to the US. When she came back to the US, her work changed. She was seeing things from a different perspective. When she was talking about sickle cell, she was seeing it from a different angle, because she had got the global experience, that she had got that global connection and see what it is, what do we do out of the world that people in the US can be able to learn from. So that's one of the key things that's one of the key important aspects of making sure that we have technology transfer from the developed and the developed, but also transfer of this experience that would be in Uganda, the experience from Kenya, the experience from Ghana, to the US citizen. Let's say an example, someone in the US who designing whatever they are trying to design. If you're trying to make a product for African people, you need Africans to be part of your design team, such that then they can know that this product can be sold to the African people. So without us as international students being in the US, there's so many universities have a lot of patents that they make. If these products are meant to go out to countries like Uganda, where I come from, they probably there should be an appeal for Ugandan customer who's going to buy it. And there's no way a professor seated in his office in the university, in the one university somewhere in the US, would know that unless his team has an international eye, someone who can say, I think from Uganda, we need to change this product and make it like this. Then once the product is launched, there will be sales that on a global scale, not only looking at the US. And that's what we are trying to talk about. I mean, when we come to US, it doesn't end with only us coming here for education. But those are some of the contributions that you don't see. If I give an idea about one of the designs being made for a diagnostic tool that can be used in Uganda, then it makes sense that people of Uganda can be able to buy it. Otherwise, if the product does not have a cultural applicability, then you as a manufacturer cannot sell it. So ideally, the value of international students is not only in terms of the money that they bring, but the experience that we share, the experience that we help people live in the US, the experience that we help all the designers, the things that are whatever is happening in the US, we have a crucial. The international students play a big part in whatever is happening. So to make in simple terms, our value it's pretty high. It's pretty big.
Definitely. Now, as we said before, and we're going to show a few tweets because this hashtag was trending, student ban, and so many stories of students who have been affected by this extremely controversial piece of legislation. ICE recently used, as we talked about before, that international students such as yourself will face deportation from the United States if their respective schools decide to do online only courses. And this ruling both encouraged it encourages this xenophobia, like, oh my God, these people are like leeching off us or something. In that, like when you make such a targeted legislation towards a certain segment of your student population, it many times it gives off xenophobic vibes. And it's also looked as a tactic by President Trump to practically force schools to open in the fall despite COVID-19. So, how do you think this ruling negatively impacts the lives of international students doing advocacy work like you do, or just are here to study? What have you seen in your community, in the international student community? What sort of stories have you seen that have really, students being impacted by this?
So first, it's pretty saddening that we have such an announcement that's going to come out.
Mhm.
Because as international students in the US, we are away from our families. I mean, we are here mostly alone. Like an example, myself, before COVID happened, I was looking forward to having my family come and join me and be able to live with me. I'll plan to go back home in July and be able to have fun with everyone in the home. But because of COVID, I was not able to do that. I had to stay here, and we're away from everyone that we love. We have to make new friends. Yeah, so it's already stressful for us to be away from people we love and people we know. So, but the immigration climate in the US has been very tense. I mean, starting from the June 22nd, the announcement on June 22nd, now this on ICE. On June 22nd, I have so many friends who have just finished, and they were they were worried that OPT is going to go. OPT is the optional training that you do after the course. There's so many worried. They're very worried that the OPT is going to go away. The CPT. So the worry was pretty a lot, but we're happy that they did tax they didn't touch that. When it comes to this announcement of ICE saying that we as international students are going to go away, all our universities go online. First, I would like to tell you, as a person that has a chronic disease, I'm a high risk for severe COVID complication. So this means, for any reason, if we are to go back to class and we have to do it in class, we have to be if for any reason, if we go back to classes and these classes are not online but face to face, I mean, the way I'm so scared because of my health. First of all, I'm so scared because of my health. I could get sick from COVID, but that not being the only issue. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of that, we already have there's a divide between international and domestic students. So we are scared as international students that we're already facing a lot of stuff. There's already a lot of racism that we face for being international, being a black man in the US. So it's already a big issue. Now we are worried that the domestic students are going to see us as the reason why they have to come back to school. So the reason why they have to put their health at risk just because of us, which entirely may not be the whole point. Maybe universities have to open for other reasons, but for now, it's being seen and shown that, you know what, because of international students, we have to open, but that may not be the big thing. So that divide is going to increase. We are worried as international students that the domestic students may see us and they may treat us more different. They're already racist encounters on campuses. So this would increase those aspects of such cases.
Wow. So you right now are, going through not just COVID, living through a pandemic, away from your family.
Yes.
The myriads of financial issues that come along with not being able to, having to sustain yourself, not being on campus, not having access to jobs, all of that. And then suffering, and yet you're still looked upon as a black man in the United States, going through Black Lives, post George Floyd.
Yes.
Wow, that's and then having to not know that whether you can go home because aren't you getting borders closed?
Yes, that's one of the things I wanted to emphasize. So to somebody like me, it's very scary because for any reason, for example, if schools are open, let's say, and COVID cases increase, and let's say the governor says or the school says, you know what, the number of cases are so high, we have to go online now because of whatever is happening. So the announcement has made it clear that if schools that go online 100%, international students would have to pack up their bags and leave. Look at a person like me. Uganda, as so many other places in the world, have their borders closed even to citizens. So yes, I cannot be able to go home. But the key question would be, in the event that ICE wants to deport me and take me back to Uganda, and Uganda is saying our borders are closed, we can't handle COVID, so everyone out there should stay wherever they are, they should not come in. Where will I go? So I'm going to be stateless. So that's already worrying and it's adds to the anxiety that I have. I'm already afraid that I'm going to get sick. I'm already scared now that I add on this extra worry that, what if COVID in cases increase? What if school goes online? Can I afford to go home? Because the other issue would then be, even if I say we're going to have to deport me to go home, because of the border closures, airport closures, the flight prices have doubled and tripled. Yeah. Right now, if I'm going to fly to Uganda, it's going to cost me $3,000 to get a flight to Uganda. That's even very expensive already. I'm a student. I've not been able to work. The campus is closed. So that's affecting me. So in addition to that, places like Uganda say, if we are to let you in, you have to sponsor your own quarantine for 14 days. So that's another fee that I need to have that fee. So many things are going through my mind. I'm worried about being deported. I'm worried about not being able to get home. I'm worried about being away from my family. I'm generally worried and scared about everything. So it's really, this the announcement of ICE was not well timed because it came in the middle of a pandemic. I know it had some good things in it because from the announcement, we know that we're allowed to take more online classes. Before, international students could only take, I think, a 3-hour credit online class. But this announcement said, yeah, with this, we allow you to take more online classes. But if all the classes are entirely online, you have to go away. So we are scared because in the event that COVID increases, the cases are rising. If you look at all states, for example, right now, the number of COVID cases are going up. So I'm personally scared that, as a person who has a chronic illness, as a person who would have to be forced to go back on campus, because the only way I'm going to maintain my legal status is if I sign up for in-person classes. This means I have to do 1, 2, or 3 in-person classes to be able to maintain my visa, because I know I don't want to be deported. I can't go to Uganda because the Ugandan border is closed. I'm literally, I'll be in this, I don't know, I'm in a state where I don't know what will happen. If the ICE decides to deport me because I'm taking online classes, what's going to happen? Uganda's border is closed. I will have no state to go. And in such a case, what's going to happen to me? So all those are things that fuel my worry, and that's pushed me to go on Twitter to say, you know what, I make a contribution to US society. I can't go home because the border is closed. This is already stressful. Being in a pandemic, it's more stressful now that I have to think about all these things because August is just a few weeks away. I have no option right now. I'm forced to the wall to do online classes. Like so many other international students, we have to do online classes to stay legal. And such cases, we are scared. We don't know. The immigration climate hasn't been good. There's a lot of pressure. I'll give an example. When the announcement did come out on Monday, I got so many messages from back home. People are like, what's happening? Are you going to be deported? Are you coming home? Everyone is scared. So that's not only me. So many WhatsApp messages, calls, families asking, are you fine? Are you going to be deported? What are you going to do? The border is closed. So we're not only us who are worried, but our family is also worried. Our friends, even friends here in the US.
Deportation contains such a negative criminalization of students. Like, for what reason? They are not, they came here on valid visas. People like you, international students come here after going through severe vetting, all of that as, as students, and to criminalize them by using that word deported. That is also another layer to this that is just so egregious. And I've seen several petitions like the one we just showed about, working against this. There've been U.S. students who've offered to exchange, open classes. But as you're saying, even if you got open classes and a lot of times public universities, the classes fill up so fast. That's another thing. So what if even if you wanted to take a class, you couldn't? Now students have offered to give up their spots, which is a very sweet gesture of solidarity. But what happens when a person like you, who has made it clear that because of your medical condition, that's dangerous for you?
Yes, it's very scary for me. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah, this
So
is this
worried
is
about everything.
this is and what will this do to the United States? I mean, like, if you ever knew that this would happen, and this is the way you would be treated, would you bring your money and your skills and
Um,
your effort here, or would you rather choose to go somewhere in
Definitely. We
Europe,
choose to
somewhere
go
else?
elsewhere. Idea if we knew these are things that happen in countries where we come from, where
Mhm.
it could be normal for these such things to happen where we come from, but we don't expect something like this in the US. This is pretty unfair. It's very inhumane and cruel not to see people. I mean, it's hard that some people are looking at it as a visa. No, we are people behind these visas. I hold an F1 visa, but I'm a person. I'm being affected by the pandemic equally as you are, and it's adds on to everyone is already scared about the pandemic. So add on to more worries that I have now, to fear of being deported. But even to me, I'm in a very special circumstance that even if my worry is if I'm to be deported right now, where am I going? Uganda's border is closed. The country can't
Exactly.
let me in. Where am I going to go? So it's pretty scary. We are really it's very unfair and cruel, I should say.
It
That
is cool.
happening.
And I can just share with you something. I was one of the first young women from my family to come overseas to study. There's already so many structural barriers to wanting to, get an education and to travel overseas.
Yeah,
Now, if there was somebody like me who was forced to leave, what standard would that set in that country? Generally it's so hard to break those barriers. Now the barrier would be like, oh no, young people, especially women, young women should not travel overseas because this could happen. And look, you tried to go and you tried to go get a degree and look what happened. They sent you back, like, stay here. That like all like these are all repercussions, the ripple repercussions that will happen, that people are not even taking into account because, as you said, they're just looking at a visa stamp and not looking at the people behind those visas.
yeah. I think if I may just add to whatever you've just said,
Mhm.
if we when we choose to leave our countries from the US, uh, one of the things we do, we invest a lot of money. I've told you about how much you have to invest from the US. Leave alone the money that you invest a lot of time. So students have been here for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, doing in the summer, almost in the middle of their programs. So it's so sad that you want to tell them to go away at that time. They have all their friends are here. They've been away from their countries for so long that they probably have no more friends there. All their friends are here. All their connections are here. So in such a case, it's pretty sad that you want to tell them to leave after 8 years of being here. It's you want to tell them to leave after 7 years of being here. As a student, really, you have to tell them to leave when they're almost going to finish their course. You want to tell them to leave. So all those things make it pretty sad. For example, if you put yourself I have a friend of mine who has been in the US for 8 years. She did her undergraduate year, did a master's, and doing her PhD now. She has a few years to finish. Now, in this time when she has 1 or 2 years to finish, they're telling her to leave. She has invested a lot of time in the US, a lot of money, a lot of effort. So that's anyone would be probably hard if you told them to leave in the middle of a big investment that they've made, because we have made a lot of sacrifices to be here in the US to be able to pursue the education that we're doing, in addition to all the other good things they're doing. But that sacrifice alone is very important for at least someone to consider that we are doing something for the society and something for the community.
So let's talk a little bit about what can be done right now.
Yeah.
What are some ways that people can support international students who are in this dilemma right now? I know Harvard University and MIT has already sued the Department of Immigration, sued the government on this decision. I believe the California State University system has also filed a lawsuit. So while universities are taking these precautions, I wanted to ask you first, how has the response been from your university, from your professors? What are they saying? So number one, what is the response from them? And number two, what can people who are watching, who are listening, who understand that this could be, there are international students out there who may be affected by this, what can they do to support you?
So first, I'm happy that the University of Kansas has been pretty lenient. They are opting for a hybrid model where we can do partly in person and partly online. But they're been pretty supportive in terms of working with us and international student leaders and financial students to assure us that, you know what, we are with you. We are doing everything possible to advocate to the federal agencies to make sure that this is reverted. Yesterday we had an email from our chancellor who said they're in support with the MIT and Harvard too. Today we have learned, I think some of the state universities in other universities are suing, and they're in support of whatever is going on. So that's the first thing that's happening. We are happy on that note that the university is doing something. When it comes to my own, from the department, I mean the Department of Ecology and Evolution, and I mean the department that I mean, what has happened is that my chair is in talks with other faculty in the department, make sure that they can make hybrid classes, some classes that can be able to accommodate international students, such that we don't have to face the legal hurdles. But the other good thing is that being a graduate student that I am, we have what we call research hours and dissertation hours. So those are coded in person. So those could keep me safe from not being deported. But then I have my colleagues who are in the undergraduate who don't have that leeway of saying, you know what, I can do research hours or dissertation hours. So those are some of the things that we are looking at in the greater international student community. One of the things that's being done right now, I think, is for you to be able to listen to the stories out there. I know there are several hashtags that are trending on Twitter right now. Hash student ban, hash I'm not a visa, hash icing me out. All these are hashtags that are trending on Twitter for international students to share their stories and how this is affecting them. But when it comes to our domestic and our fellow colleagues out there, it's just to show some love. I mean, just know that we are people. We come from so far away. We have left everything. We have left everyone we know and our family. All we need is your love and support and care during this trying time of the pandemic, because the pandemic has literally makes things up and down. That's one of the key things that want support, and also for people to be able to sign the petition that are being probably. I think there's several petitions that are going around online. Add your signature, share them, make sure that this can be heard, that this is affecting us as financial students. It's increasing the state of worry and fear that we have as students.
This is so yes, this is something that I wanted to actually, when even COVID first happened, that was something that I was worried about, like how are international students faring, because I know some of the support that I got as an international student was I had a foster family that's what they used to call me when in New Orleans, especially when I moved there for to do part of my degree there. And that foster family was part of the reason, like, they made my experience there so wonderful. They were supportive of me in times where I need, a lot of times you don't have those family support system. You don't have anybody to turn to during holidays, during Thanksgiving, or maybe they might be just local small issues. A lot of international students don't have cars. They don't know the culture. They don't know, I remember like little things like this. Like I remember never having been to a department store. And always like buying stuff from Sheets and stuff. Like in Boston, I remember buying sheets from the MIT Coop, and they were so expensive. And I had no idea that there were department stores and there were sales and you could go there, because we didn't grow up here, so we didn't know what Macy's was. I didn't know that when so those are the sort of things that really, like, the experience of being a student, and being so far away from home, and then being like, and I cannot imagine during this pandemic what international students are going through. They don't know if they will be able to see their families. They'll so many, I've heard of people not being able to attend funerals, being so far away while their loved ones are sick overseas. So it's a really painful time. So I'm glad you shared some of these ways that people can be, supportive of international students. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think just to add to what you've shared, the experience of living home to come to a foreign land is pretty different. I mean, I'll give an example. If you're in Uganda, if you're going to cross the road, you have to look right and left, then run. So here in the US, you have to go and press a button and wait for it to say, you can now use the walkway. So that's a pretty different experience for someone who hasn't grown up in the US. That's a pretty normal thing for one who has lived here, but for someone who hasn't grown up here, those are small things that would make a very big impact in terms of the experience that they have being out from home, in terms of experiencing all such things when we leave home to come to the US. But I think just to add on everything you've shared, one of the things, yes, it's pretty important to talk about foster families. We used to have several group meetings. People could go meet and have group dinners and lunch. When pandemic happened, you just couldn't go visit anyone. You just couldn't go visit anyone's home. You're worried that what if I have COVID? What if I have COVID? So all those have put more psychological burden onto us, more psychological stress. Because, for example, the fact that we don't have a family support system with us, the fact that we don't have a family support structure with us here in the US, so it probably means the only way we can survive is through friends and connection like those. But from what's happening right now is that we can't go. All those have been stopped. We can't. There's a time when we couldn't meet if you're more than 10 people. If you couldn't meet when you're more than 3 people. So in that case, international have even hit worse because at that time we are cut off from everyone that we knew because we're already cut off from being away from home. But now, once we are here, the COVID situation got us cut off from everyone we knew again. So that's one of the key things that has happened. But we appreciate that support, all the support that is coming out from different institutions, the different people trying to support and show love for international students in the US.
Yeah, this is so important to highlight, and this is one of the things that I had seen on Twitter, and I hope if you can see this on here, is how the student ban affects an international student's health, financial situation, and professional development. And this was one of the tweets that was shown. This graph. Could you explain this to us?
So one of the things that happened from that tweet was made by one of the Chinese students who was trying to say, what will actually happen to you if you're in the US? If the universities decide to go, if universities decide to go 100% online, if you are in the US, you have to be deported. You can't stay in the US. If you are not in the US and you had applied for a visa, your visa will be denied because the embassy would say, yeah, you're online, so then we can't give you a visa to go to the US. That's one of the issues that happened there. If you then get to be deported, for example, and if you're lucky, you find a plane to take you to the country you're going from. In some cases, you can't find any plane to take you back because the border closures. Then you may have to stay illegal in the US. Once you stay illegal in the US, it becomes a criminal issue for you to be an illegal immigrant in the US. That's one of the key issues there. Mm-hmm. So in the case, even if you decide to get lucky to find a ticket to take you home, like I said, you have to spend money in the 14-day quarantine. I told that to you earlier. And still, one of the key things that happened there, once that happens to you, you probably lose all your funding and you can't graduate because you've been pushed out of the US. If you look at the case, what if the university decides to go hybrid? That's what people are trying to say. If you are in the US, then that's okay. You risk having to go to classes. When you risk having to go to classes, it means you're either having to suffer, in case you get sick, you have to suffer with the consequences of the insure all the health expenses for you being sick. Another issue, in case even if you're not, even if you don't get sick, the running experience is pretty scary because you're worried of getting sick. You're going to class, you're very paranoid and scared, worried of being able to get sick. If universities are hybrid in a way and you're not in the US, I mean, you can't get a visa or you can't get a visa on time. If you get lucky, you can get a visa, then probably can come. But then in case if you can't get, even if you get a visa, sometimes you may be unlucky that the airports are closed and you just can't leave to come to the US. So it's the dynamics of this hybrid online thing is it goes way beyond just being deported. All those things that are happening. You lose the time and funding. That we are an example because some of the departments here assure you funding once you are in the US. They'll not give you funding once you're out of the US. We had this question yesterday about most of us international students, if graduates, we are on GTAs and GRAs and GS. But human resource was like, once you get deported and leave the US, we can no longer continue to fund you as a GT, as a GRA. That means you may not have enough money to pay the student fees that you have to pay because some of these student fees are not made by those fees. You have to pay them out yourself as a student. So the dynamics of this deportation thing is pretty worrying and scary because right now I'm going to be a GTA for 4. I'm one of the lucky few whose department was able to still go ahead and keep GTAs. So many of my colleagues have lost GTA funding because of enrollment and other issues. But in that case, if classes go online and we are deported, then it means we also lose the GTA ships and JRAs and GAs that we have. And in such a case, then we're not able to afford the education and we may not be able to continue with our dreams to pursue an education in the US. So that's the reality of what's really going on. So that's one of the key issues that we have to think about in regards to this online and hybrid and offline thing, deportation aspect.
Exactly. And this is one of the things that this tweet that we were showing was highlighting, is that, this people are not understanding that this could happen to hundreds and thousands of people.
Yeah.
ICE facilities are made to detain and deport hundreds and thousands of people at the same time. This is not something that is improbable,
Yeah.
right? And this is something that could happen, is happening, and this is the lived reality of people. Like, people are like, this young woman is joking about it, like, what would I take with me? My toothbrush and my laptop to write my dissertation.
Yeah.
And this is people's livelihood. As you were saying, that people have spent 7-8 years in this country, perhaps working on their PhDs, on their masters, trying to get, like, contribute to this. And this is just something, and like, we've discussed the Muslim ban before on this show, and this is just another level. Like, people are now realizing that these experiments that they were doing on the Muslim community, these are like on the Latino community, these were canaries in the coal mine, right? They were actually testing it out to see how it would function, and if it, and this extremely racist way of looking at this, the xenophobic way of looking at international students, is just like, it's really hitting hard.
If I may add to whatever you're saying, this goes back to the debate people have been having about having places where ICE should not go. Campuses should be probably the sanctuary in the state that ICE shouldn't go to school campuses and sanctuary cities. So this raises that debate because it didn't stop there, like you've said. It didn't stop at the Muslim ban. It didn't stop at all the other communities. It has now come to the students. So it's pretty very scary and pretty worrying. We are living in a state of worry about not knowing what's going to happen because, like I said at the start, the immigration climate has been pretty tense. Like June 22nd, we had the new announcement. We thought it's going to affect OPT, CPT. So many students study here because they hope to move on to HB1 visas. So all that has been affected. So the immigration climate has been pretty scary and pretty tense for students in the West. So we hope that, the administration ought to look at us as people who make a contribution, who have something valuable we are doing to society.
Yeah, exactly. And so I want to give you some time to talk about the work that you are doing, because this is also something. We are an advocacy organization. We advocate for human rights. We believe that, disability awareness, advocacy, these are all things that contribute to making a better world. So please take this time to share something about the fascinating work that you've been doing.
So first of all, I'm a sickle cell advocate. I'm happy to tell you that, just a few hours ago, I received the award, the International Sickle Cell Advocate of the Year 2020. So that's
Wow.
I'm pretty excited.
Congratulations.
It's really humbling that I've been recognized at this global scale. And it hasn't really I started out my advocacy initiatives about 2013 when I had a personal heartbreak moment. One of the ladies I love told me she couldn't be with me because of sickle cell. And that was my turning point to get active engaged in sickle cell. I said I'll have to change the status quo. We went ahead and I was part of a team that started a non-profit called the Ghana Sickle Cell Rescue Foundation. And we were trying to advocate, make sure we talk about sickle cell awareness, let people know that sickle cell is an issue. We can prevent sickle cell but by screening and make sure that people support those who are living with sickle cell. And through the advocacy initiative is where the U.S. Department of State identified me and brought me to the U.S. as a young African leader to learn and share my experience in 2017. And that's where my love for U.S. started to drive me to apply for graduate school back in the U.S. So that's what I've been doing for the past so many years. Today, as I speak right now, I'm a board member of the Will Owen Sickle Cell Disease Association in the Midwest here, a local association in a local chapter of the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, where we are still trying to support sickle cell awareness and advocacy, making sure people know about what sickle cell is, how we can support people who are living with sickle cell, making sure we can have equitable access to care, making sure we address all issues that affect people who are living with sickle cell. So that's one of the key issues that is happening in the world. Like I said, 75% of the world sickle cell is in sub-Saharan Africa. So, and yet sickle cell is one of those neglected diseases across the world. I think it wasn't until, in the early 90s that we had hydroxyurea, one of the sickle cell disease, one of the sickle cell drugs that can moderate the disease. We got blessed last year that the FDA approved two new drugs. Two new drugs were approved by FDA to be able to treat people with sickle cell. But before then, people living with sickle cell truly did not have any kind of drug moderating apart from hydroxyurea. and could only survive from blood transfusion, hydroxyurea, and other comprehensive care that they receive from the healthcare system. So one of the things we as sickle cell advocates are pushing for is to let people know that in the US, for example, sickle cell is classified as a rare disease because not more than 100,000 people have it. But places like Uganda has the fifth highest sickle cell burden in Africa. That means that we need to work with people here, research organizations, to support initiatives for sickle cell, to make sure that if we don't address sickle cell wherever it is, that's how sickle cell got to the US by people like me coming to the US and other people and other issues. But clearly the key assumption is here is to understand that this is a rare disease. Being a rare disease means we need to take an extra level of advocacy because so many people do not know about it. When you go to primary health care, chances are they have never had any patient who live with sickle cell because it's a rare disease in the US. So those are some of the other issues we face as internationals when we come to the US, because you may be in a place where there's a desert of healthcare, where people who understand your condition are not there because you come from elsewhere. So me being an example, the student health center I go to at the University of Kansas, the physician clearly told me, yeah, you are my first sickle cell patient, but he has been in practice for over 40 years. Wow. So him being able to take care of me means he's getting that experience to take care of the sickle cell patient. So even if I leave, that's another added value of making to this community, because the physicians are getting experience to take care of diseases that they don't have or that are rare in the US. So that's another contribution that we make being international people in the US. But the key aspect is in terms of sickle cell care, our core is to tell people that they should take a sickle cell test, be able to know their genotype, and be able to support all the sickle cell organizations out there. Right now, one of my biggest projects I'm working on is there's a book project working on the Ghanaian author, because we want to address sickle cell advocacy in Uganda, and we're yet to put out the drive to fundraise, make sure we can print these books and spread these books in schools and care centers, because there's a lot of stigma. And even in Uganda, for example, I told you about my personal story, whereby once I was born with sickle cell, I had to leave my mom because at the time, sickle cell was looked at as a death sentence. Look at this boy is going to die. And because of that, my mother gave me the name Tushubia, which means we hope. Her issue was she was trying to inspire hope in herself, and maybe inspire hope in me, that we hope that you not be a statistic. We hope that you be something different. Hope that you make some meaningful change into the society. And that's one of the things.
Wow. And that is such a beautiful note to end this on. I'm sorry we've run out of time, but thank you so much for being here and sharing your just inspiring story. Yeah. I hope, and we're going to work hard and try to see if we can do whatever we can to get this repealed. We're going to be cheering on for those cases. And thank you so much for being here, Sharif. And you have got, people like you.
Thank you very, very much.
People like you bring hope to a world that is often quite dark. Thank you so much to all our audience for watching us. You can watch us on Muslim Network TV 24/7. Assalamu alaikum.